Welcome to another episode of TLS Table Talks. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Tonight is a really special night. We're here with Luke Brown and Jonna Meyer, and they are both healthcare workers kind of on the front lines right now of this crazy season that we're in. So we're so excited to just dive in tonight about what it looks like to be a healthcare worker in this season and how God has really helped shape what they're going through and as they continue to persevere in this time. Guys, thanks so much for being here. I'm so excited for you guys to be here. And we'll just kind of jump right into it. So my first question for both of you is, how did you get into healthcare? Why did you get into healthcare? What's your passion for it?
Yeah. I kind of always knew I wanted to be in the caring profession, whatever that looked like. I think when I was little, I wanted to be a zoologist and I wanted to care for monkeys. Funny enough. And then as I got into high school, I started working with our sports teams and was an athletic trainer and cared for the athletes that I worked with. And so I just kind of went down that road. My grandmother was actually a nurse and worked in the operating room. And so, once I graduated high school and decided to do college, nursing is kind of what I decided on. And I love it.
And you're in the labor and delivery, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I work in labor and delivery, so I help moms and dads and their families welcome new babies to their lives. So
yeah, that's
great.
really awesome.
Yeah.
Luke, what about you?
So I am a respiratory therapist and an ECMO specialist. I got into healthcare as a EMT years ago, which also with that was a CNA and everything, and then got into respiratory because I wanted to kind of continue on. I kind of got out of healthcare for a little while and then realized that I wanted to kind of get back into it. So I looked into different things, and I liked respiratory. So I decided to go into that. And so I've been a respiratory therapist for 11 years and an ECMO specialist for 3. And as a respiratory therapist, I work in, my primary area in the hospital is the neonatal ICU. So working with the micropreemies and then also with the ECMO, I work in the cardiothoracic ICU. Right now that all of the ECMO patients we have are not cardiothoracic patients, they're all COVID patients. So I work with those as well as the micropreemies.
So this season, especially with the pandemic, is right up your alley, specifically dealing with COVID and stuff. How have you seen that change, like healthcare for both of you? Like, obviously you're always dealing with sick people. That's just a given. But in this season of what seems to be heightened sickness, how have you seen that kind of change as far as your daily job and everything?
So for us, it's a lot of change in what we're seeing as far as patient population. We've stopped and just now starting back up, but we've stopped a lot of the elective surgeries and other things have stopped, and so we've seen almost a really slow patient care side of things in the hospital, but the COVID stuff did ramp up. It's interesting to see in the differences in the care of things, like in even how we deal with deliveries. I'm sure you deal with it too. The procedures that we have to go through just for deliveries, even on some of these moms who are COVID positive. So
Yeah, agreed. It's been interesting to see with stopping certain procedures like elective procedures and surgeries, and people just aren't coming to the hospital as much anymore. Out of fear, out of regulation, I don't know what it is, but my role is a little bit different in that you still have to come to the hospital to have your baby. Well, most women anyway. And so we haven't necessarily seen a decrease in our patients, but there definitely is a heightened sense of awareness and fear and questioning about certain things. And, it's been really different. We have to wear masks all of the time. And so you lose that sense of bond with your patient because they don't see your face. They don't know when I'm smiling or enjoy with them, or when I'm concerned, or whatever the circumstances may be. So that part of it has been really interesting to like navigate, just the different kind of care that you have to give, despite the hoops you have to jump through and the different rules that are in place.
Yeah, and I see this kind of battle that you guys are fighting now that is ramped up, because before you just had to deal with, but you just were focused on just the sick and the natural like procedures that you were doing, whether it was giving, delivering babies or helping with respiratory issues. But now you've got to deal with just the fear on top of that of just this COVID stuff and you getting sick or it spreading even far. So it's not just about the procedure anymore. It's just about the sickness overall. So I feel like that's another battle you're fighting. And in the midst of that, how are you guys staying centered and prayerful when you're dealing with all of these emotional situations? People who still have to go to the hospital and are afraid, but then on top of that, you're dealing with the fear of the COVID stuff. How do you stay centered, and how do you, stay steadfast, and how do you persevere in these times?
I think it's a good question, because it's hard to answer because you just do, I guess. As a Christian, I grew up as a Christian, and you just are always, I think, preparing to stay Christ-centered and prayerfully centered in every aspect of your life. And in any profession, practice makes perfect. And you get to a certain point in your profession where things you just do. And I think it becomes easier and easier to become centered and all of that in doing even the mundane tasks. Not to say that I'm great at it, and not to say that it's super easy to always, in a circumstance at work that comes up where things are stressful, to automatically think of Christ. But I think he's just instilled a sense of peace in me, at least. I think that's my personality, is just a personality of peace. I don't get too anxious about too many things. I just have to really point that to him and just say, I'm grateful that you've just instilled in me the confidence to carry out these tasks. And even though we're scared, and even though we're uncertain about what COVID has the potential to do to our country, I just rest in the fact that he is good, and the fact that he gives me peace, and I have hope that he's just gonna take care of it and give me the ability to use what I know to get through it.
That's really good. Yeah.
So for me, I notice a lot of times it's just in how we deal with and what we do with our work. There's a certain amount of detachment that you have to be able to do. You can't let yourself get too emotional. And I know also for myself, I kind of just mental strength on my own, feeling like I can do this on my own. I don't, hang on, God, I got this. I'm too busy. And I notice a lot of times when I am not centered, that I struggle more, that, those things get to me more. Those times get harder. And it's so easy to just say, I'm too busy, right? Life is hard right now. I can't focus on God. I can't really stay plugged in with him. And it's so easy to just depend on our own selves, but realizing that when we do that we suffer and we struggle. And so not only just how do I do it, it's just remembering to do it and staying plugged in. And also I've noticed a lot just with the fellowship that we have with each other helps. So not only just depending on God, but also on our fellow believers. And that friendship, that fellowship that we have with each other is really a good part for me to really remember. And I forget it so often that, I'm too busy. You're not too busy. You can't be too busy for what is really most important.
And the irony being that we are stripped of that fellowship naturally right now. And so having to be more intentional, about, which I think is so cool that you guys are both here today, because you both work in different fields, in different hospitals, but you really are fighting the same concept, the same battles, and just to be able to have both of you in the room together. And I think obviously we want to be safe, and you guys know more than anybody in healthcare that safety is a priority, but learning how to find that fellowship with each other in the midst of this time, that goes far beyond healthcare. That is just, I mean, for us and, and for everyone. And I think what you were saying too about just staying centered in God and remembering the goodness of who he is. I think it's really easy to get jaded in this season. And I mean, I get jaded just from the articles I read, and you guys are like literally there every day. And so I can imagine that fight of remembering the goodness of God, and we have to go back to scripture and see who God says he is and how he comes through for his people. And so I think it's really awesome that you guys are so aware of that, because I think half of the battle is just being aware. And so kind of like tagging on to that, just in the world as a whole, because you guys are in healthcare, I feel like you have maybe a little bit better perspective than somebody like, me, who just Googles everything, which you shouldn't do, by the way. But how has your faith influenced kind of the fear like around the world, like not just in your specific job, but, everybody's terrified in the world. And so how has your faith influenced your perspective of what's happening? Or maybe it hasn't, I don't know. But how has your faith influenced kind of the bigger picture of like the future and what's happening around the world as far as this pandemic is concerned?
Yeah. So much, I guess is the short answer. My faith has influenced it so much. Being in healthcare, we rely on science. And science is seeing and understanding and making sense of things. And faith is not that. Faith is believing and trusting. And so it's like a weird paradox of, trying to understand what this virus means and what this virus can do and what the best way to fight it and all of those things. But then on the other token is, as a believer, having faith that regardless of what we figure out, God's still got it, and God is still going to make a way for us to understand this or not. And so it's a weird, having faith during this time is a weird thing in the sense of it's not the popular thing. It's not the popular thing just to trust that God's got it. Now, that doesn't mean blindly trusting it, and that still means doing things safely and respecting what people have put in place to keep us safe. But just knowing that God's got a purpose for this, I think. And, the nice thing about being a believer and having the Holy Spirit is that he instills in you a hope that you can't really explain to other people. And relying on that hope and knowing that there is going to be some kind of fruit that is going to come out of this makes it somewhat easier just to figure things out and to go through the motions of being scared and being nervous, but also just being reminded that it's going to be okay, so. Yeah, no,
that's really good. What about you, Luke?
So, yeah, kind of that, just what you're saying is kind of build on that. A lot of what we do, I know particular for me, just in healthcare and in the hospital, there's a lot of amazing things and also really just horrific things that happen. And, from new life coming into the world, it's an amazing thing to, also, end of life things, and how quickly you can go from even a situation with, a family that is expecting a child, and it's here at 24 weeks and there's complications, and you're looking at, a long, NICU stay. And to see things like that, turn, and to try to wrap your head around why does things like that happen, and to still have that faith, it's sometimes it's hard to really stay focused on it and really, trust God, but just to think we can't really wrap our heads around why those things happen and, how they happen, why they happen, but it's just, we have to still stay trusting God that, He is going to take care of us, the these things that are happening now. We've had horrible things happen all throughout history. This isn't, where the human race isn't going to stop seeing horrible things happen. God has seen us through those times. What we may be going through right now in our lives, and even in these lives of these families that are going through horrific times, God is still there for us, and just to try to remember that and stay faithful in him, because he's faithful in us through all these times that we may not understand or even feel like he's there. He still is, and he always has been.
It reminds me of a conversation we had a couple weeks ago with Jenny and Ryan Loveland. They were here, and Jenny said something, and I thought it was so good. She said, we oftentimes look at God to be our rescuer, but sometimes God wants to be our anchor instead. Yeah. And just thinking about, like, in this season, kind of what you're talking about, how do we make God our anchor instead of our rescuer? Knowing that, there is no promise in Scripture that we'll be delivered all the time. There are stories of deliverance, and he does deliver. Yes. But knowing that sometimes and I think you guys are the people that he's using in this time, he's your anchor. And then what does that look like in your settings that you're in? And how can he be glorified through people like you who are serving on the front lines and staying steadfast in that? Have you guys been able to, I don't know what the regulations are, have you guys had any freedom to really talk about God or express that? Or what does your faith look like? How do you express that in your work? Because obviously it's kind of hard to do that openly. So how do you kind of find ways to express your beliefs and stuff in your work? If you can. I don't know if you can.
No, that's a good question. I think in this day and age, it's a lot harder to be blatantly open about it. I think you have to be very careful about how you do it. Just as I think every church answer would go, I mean, you got to live your life like Christ and mirror Christ in so many ways. And the conversations you have with your colleagues and the conversations you have with all the different workers you have with respiratory, with the physicians, just being Christ-minded. I think in healthcare especially, where sometimes a lot of things can seem so jaded and a lot of attitudes can be so jaded, I think having the light of Christ just shine through you speaks so much more than sometimes sitting down with someone. But I mean, in labor and delivery, it's a miracle every day. Yeah. And so I think it's really easy to see God, and even people, if they're not necessarily religious, they see the beauty in life and the beauty in giving birth. And so I feel like I'm blessed and in a unique place that I get to show God a lot more than maybe some other places. And I can only say that just from where I am. I don't know that that wouldn't be the case anywhere else. But yeah, I think it's becoming harder and harder to do that, but thankfully, God still shines through the dark times and where we are.
Yeah, it is hard to really know, these people are either, they're going through a hard time, do they want to hear what you have to say? The amazing thing is that in the hospital setting itself, those are hard times that people are going through, and a lot of times you will see people come back to their faith. And we see I know for myself, we see miracles every day, and it's so easy to not recognize it even as a miracle. I mean, there's so many times where we think that a patient is not going to make it, and I come back several days later and they're doing so much better, and we go, oh, I don't know how that happened. Yeah, we do. And so with that, I know a couple weeks ago, I was taking care of a gentleman on ECMO. This when they're going on ECMO, there's nothing else we can do for them. The normal life support measures aren't working, and we have to do something drastic. It's very dangerous, and there's a lot of complications with it. And this time, family can't come in and be with their sick family members. And this wife of this patient that I was caring for that was very sick called in, and she was calling the nurse. The nurse was in the room, the phone was sitting outside the room, and I answered the phone. And so she was just talking to me, and she was like, "Can I pray with you?" And I was like, "Yes, that would be great." And it was so exciting to just share that time, that moment with her, and her praying for us and thanking us and praying for her husband, and also just being involved in that was so special. And I mean, there's times where we get that, where, you know, the people are looking to God and they're looking for that comfort, and they come back to that, and you get to be part of it is wonderful.
Yeah. And kind of going off of that, in this season that you guys find yourselves in, obviously encouragement is probably a really big deal right now. Like they're doing the things where they're like honking at 8:00 for healthcare workers and like shooting off fireworks, and they're doing really fun stuff. Which I don't know if that is encouraging to you or not. I know the first time it happened, I was like, what is happening? But I think it's really cool that people want to come and support and really rally around you guys. And so what kinds of encouragement have you seen for healthcare workers, for you guys specifically? What kind of encouragement has helped you in this season? You know, for those who are watching and want to know ways that they can help during this time, especially, you know, for people like you, what are ways that you find yourself being encouraged?
So, I mean, people send in food. We love food.
Yeah, man.
Food is great. You know, it's always exciting when you come into the apartment and there's, oh, somebody sent food. It's great. But, I mean, just also little things. My neighbors wrote on my sidewalk one day. I was leaving for work, and I walk outside, and on my sidewalk is written, you know, "We're praying for you. You know, you're doing good things. We're here with you." You know, little things like that too. You know, just knowing that people are still thinking of us, you know, and checking in with Keith. You know, I was talking with him, and you know, a lot of times I've been working a lot of overtime even, and by the time I'm done with my 4 or 5 shifts that I've done that week, I'm burnt out. My wife says I'm cynical. You're very cynical. Why are you so cynical? I'm like, I don't know, I'm just tired. I need to sleep, you know. But I was talking to Keith, and his encouragement to me was, you know, this isn't permanent, you know, things will change, you know, this is, you know, just wait, you know, basically trust God. And just, you know, just hearing from him and talking to him was encouragement to me. And it was very much needed, and I was very appreciative of that. Just knowing that somebody's there and they're pulling for me, they're thinking of me, to remind me, you know what, you're struggling right now in this moment, you know, even after you get sleep, you'll be better. So, yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I feel when it first started happening, like the howling at 8:00, I was just like, this is so weird. Because I don't feel, I mean, yeah, I'm in healthcare, but that's my job every day.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I'm doing necessarily anything different now than I was yesterday or before
Yeah, people
all
are
this
like,
happened.
you're a hero, and I'm like,
I don't know.
What?
So it's a weird thing because, yeah, while we still are going to work, there's a lot of people that aren't able to go to work. And so it's weird. But at the same time, when I feel like, all right, but then having that encouragement really does mean a lot. And I think it's just God's way of reminding us that he loves us, and people love us as well, and he's loving us through others. And yeah, food is great, especially at work when people bless us with treats and goodies. It feels so nice. And just to be recognized, I think, in a different way, while I don't feel like it's needed, it's appreciated. Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think too, you know, you guys are both such humble people, and I know that you'll be like, whatever, but you guys both just serve all the time. And I think it's just good to be recognized sometimes. You know, you guys are risking your lives, not just with this COVID stuff, but with everything. You know, you are probably in contact with so many different kinds of things every day that you work, you know, and so your line of work is a very courageous line of work, whether or not you think that it's that, or whether you got into healthcare for that or not. You guys are really brave, and you are working so many shifts that's taking you away from your families, and you know, that should be recognized. And I think it's good to be recognized for those things, you know. And you are heroes, maybe not in the wearing a cape and flying Superman kind of way, but in the you are taking care of people who are so terrified and so sick. or so scared, they're giving birth for the first time or whatever. And you are that person that, is guiding them through those times. That is such a big deal. And so I just want to honor both of you in this moment, and for people who are watching, even though you're probably uncomfortable about it, but I want to honor you because what you do does matter. It is very significant to everyone in the whole world. And one day when I'm really sick and I have to go to the hospital, then it will be really significant to me also. But what you guys do really does matter. So thank you. Whether or not you think that, thank you so much. And so just kind of summarizing up everything, I just want you guys to have one kind of last thought. If you could encourage people with their faith and with healthcare, if you could leave them with one thought, just from all of your experiences, all of the things that you've done, seen, worked through yourself, like what would you leave people with when it comes to having faith in seasons of health scares or seasons of uncertainty?
Let's see, to sum that up in like one final thought. I guess the biggest thing I can say is be diligent now. Be diligent in seeking him, in trusting him in the mundane, because the true test is trusting him in the really, really scary and the really, really hard. And so by learning to just trust him in everything that you do, it makes the times of health scares or whatever the circumstance may be, it makes those times all the easier by just trusting him and knowing that he is good and knowing that his plan for you has a purpose. And that purpose is not always what we think it is. And it's not always what we want it to be. It's for him and it's for his glory. And by practicing that now and being diligent to be reading his word and having a relationship with him, I think that just makes your faith so much easier to see his hand in the hard and in the scary.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, really, I would say, in a reminder of my own life, like you're saying now, be diligent, be now, like so easy, like I was kind of saying before, I'm busy, I'm going to go about my life, and to just kind of put that off, and it's like right now is the time where you really need to be doing that, not only like seeking him and drawing close to him, but also that fellowship, right now. And if you wait, you can do it. A lot of people will wait. You'll see when they're too busy with their normal lives to spend time doing this, and they'll wait until their health is gone or something, and they will miss out on the good times. When you're healthy, you can have that fellowship with others. When you're sick and in the hospital, you can't have that fellowship. You're missing out on those wonderful things that you can experience when you're healthy. Don't wait because you're too busy. Start now. Don't let that time go by. There's so much that you can benefit from your everyday life by plugging in fellowship with others. Spending time in the Word. Growing. When you have those busy times. That's the biggest thing I can say is don't put it off. You'll miss out.
Yeah. That's really good. Thank you guys so much for coming and for sharing and for talking. It's been really good. And I hope that you guys are encouraged by what they've talked about, knowing that God is in control in this season. And we want to be safe and we want to be practical, but we want to trust that God is going to work all things out for the good of those who love him. So we love you guys, and we will see you same time next week.